For commercials and corporate narrations and other genres of voiceover, I tend to work with audio post-production companies, which have audio engineers. And what is the responsibility of an audio post-production company? Well, they have to record the voiceover, especially if you go in person. They have to mix the audio of the voiceover, and they might also be responsible for the entire mix of the audio of whatever piece of content you're doing, whether it's a commercial, corporate narration, etc. On the audio end, they might have all the responsibility, which means we need to do things properly because it will reflect well on them. This is why I make sure everything on my end is in place before the session starts. First of all, I connect 5 to 10 minutes earlier before the session is actually supposed to start. What this allows us to do is, if I inform the audio engineer that I'm connecting earlier, it will allow us to do a sound check. It will also allow us to do a network test. So, hey, let's record the first sentence and listen to if there are any problems. This is particularly important in remote sessions because it's much harder for an audio engineer to diagnose problems on a setup they're not aware of, because as far as they're aware, they can see me and they can see the microphone. They don't know what interface I'm using, they can't see my cables, they can't check if everything is plugged in properly. So this is why it's critical to make sure there are no technical issues, especially before the client connects. Instead, if this is an in-person session, then we're really just looking at me going in there and we verify distance from the microphone and the audio engineer checks the gain. That is obviously much simpler because the studio is something they have in their control. Something else I do, which isn't always needed, but I just want to make sure very often, is I will ask if I need to take any kind of notes or mark any kind of takes that the client preferred, just so that because we may be doing multiple takes, we may be doing 10, 20 takes potentially, I just want to make sure that the client has exactly what it is that they want. Usually the answer is no because the audio engineer does that, but sometimes if I have to be a little bit more hands-on with the session, this is a good option to have. And the third thing is I don't mess with the audio. As tempting as it can be to try and correct any kind of issues with the audio, remember that an audio post-production's main purpose is to make audio sound good. So who do you think the expert in audio is, and who do you think should be the one touching the audio? Is it me, the voice actor, or is it the audio post-production company, the company who is dedicated to making audio sound good? This means no compression, no noise reduction, no equalization, nothing. If I absolutely need to make adjustments, so for example, if there's a particularly loud section and I need to reduce my gain, one thing I actually do is I tell the audio engineer, hey, for this segment, I'm reducing it by 12 dB. Additionally, if I record something and I'm not totally sure if it sounded right, I can always ask, hey, can we listen to that again? And if nobody hears an issue, then there is no issue. Lastly, I am transparent. If there are issues, it needs to be communicated. As a matter of fact, one time I had a recording session and on that day we had some really strong winds to the point where I could hear them in my recordings. So what I did was I contacted the audio engineer and said, hey, I've got some really strong winds. I want to send you a sample. Tell me if this is going to be a problem. We checked it. He said that it's not going to be a problem. If it's really an issue, then they can apply some noise reduction. But again, that's the responsibility of the audio engineer, that, they're the ones that handle the audio. But the point is, had that sound been an issue, then you could end up in a situation where you record in the live session, you send the audio, and all of a sudden, if it's really terrible, then they have to apply too much noise reduction, which can kill the clarity of the voiceover, and then the client really gets a subpar product, and it looks bad on them because I had an issue. This shouldn't happen. It really can't happen. And ultimately, my mistake turns into their mistake. They could potentially lose business, and I've lost a client as well. So it's just bad on all fronts. So that's why it's essential to work well with audio post-production companies to make sure their life is much easier.